All right, in this lesson, we are going to revisit how to add and subtract fractions. So in Algebra 2, what happens is we do a lot of things that involve fractions, and kids often forget the rules. And we have to know our basic rules if we're going to apply this to Algebra 2 material, especially when we have letters involved. So it's always good to do a little refresher. So rule number 1, in mathematics, you have what I call addition, subtraction world and multiplication, division world. And so there's rules that are in adding, subtracting world that are very different than the rules in multiply, divide world. So we want to try to keep those separate. Addition and subtraction is always the more annoying of the two worlds because the rules are very strict. So case in point, if you want to add and subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator. That's not the case for multiplying and dividing, so there's an extra step you have to do. So we need to establish a common denominator. Once we do that, we'll either add or subtract the top of the fractions, which is called the numerators, but the bottoms or the denominators will stay the same. So I always tell the kids, we change the tops, we don't change the bottoms. So one thing to keep in mind is whatever you choose to do to the fraction, so you can multiply or divide, those are your options. If you do that to the bottom, you have to do that to the top as well so that the ratio is balanced. So for example, if you have 1/2, you can double the top and the bottom and make it 4/8. It's still 50% either way, so even though the top and the bottom changed, the ratio between them did not change. So that's what we're just going to practice right now. So if I have 1/2, to turn 1 into 4, I had to multiply by 4. So that's what I have to do to the bottom. So I would have 8 as my denominator. If I start with 1/2, it looks like I have to multiply 2 by 2 to get 4. Well, then I have to do it to the top, and that gets me 2. All right, 10/15ths. To get 10 to become 2, I have to divide by 5, and I do that on the bottom. So I'm going to get 3. And then to turn 32 into 4, we have to divide by 8. So you have to do that to the top as well, and that will get you 3. So we're just going to do some basic addition here, or subtraction. We're going to do it one way, and then we're going to do the exact same 4 problems, but a completely different way. All right, so when I look at my denominators, 4 and 3, I have to think of something that is a multiple of both of those numbers. So for example, multiples of 4 would be 4, 8, 12, 16, etc. Multiples of 3 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, etc. I want to know what's the first one they'll have in common. So if you know your times tables really well, this will be a cinch. So both of those numbers can go into 12. So my common denominator is 12. To get 4 to become 12, I have to multiply it by 3. So then I have to do that to the top and make that into 9. To turn 3 into 12, I have to multiply it by 4. So if I do 5 times 4, I get 20. So now I have my common denominator. Now I'm ready to add. So I'm going to get 29 over 12. And we actually are just going to leave it like that. Believe it or not, in Algebra 2, it's a lot easier to work with improper fractions. Number 2. 3 and 5 are both factors of 15, so that's your common denominator. To get 3 and 5 to become 15, I have to multiply by 5, multiply by 3. So my new numerators are 10 and 12. If I do 10 minus 12, I'm going to get -2, so the answer is -2/15. Number 3, I see 5 and 2 are my denominators. So those are both factors of 10. And then to turn 5 into 10, I have to multiply by 2 to get 4. To turn 1/2 into 10, I have to multiply the top by 5. And so 4 minus 5 is -1. Last but not least, between 3 and 6, both of those go into 6. 6 is a multiple of itself because you can do 6 times 1 and get 6. So our common denominator is 6, which means my first fraction will be 10 over 6, but my second fraction will just stay the same. And so when I simplify, I get 18 over 6. Now, I will tell you that in the computer program that we use, it will not accept that answer. So all fractions have to be simplified. I can actually do 18 divided by 6. That's just 3. So I can go further. So I have to do that, make it 3. Way number 2. So again, we're going to redo 1 through 4, but in a different way. Before I show you this, I want to note that this is a cheat method. We're technically not allowed to do this, but we'll just undo it at the end, and it's like we never cheated. All right, so again, we're going to borrow the trick, but we have to undo it in the very end. So I start out the same way. I try to figure out who's my common denominator, and we said it was 12 for number 1. So what I'm going to do is put a times 12 on the top of each fraction. And the way it works is we can either do 3 times 12 and then divide that answer by 4, or we can do 12 divided by 4 and then multiply that by 3. That's the way that I choose to do it because that keeps your numbers nice and small. And if your numbers are small, your chances of making errors go down. So if we do 12 divided by 4, that's 3, times 3 is 9. And then we do it again. 12 divided by 3 is 4, times 5 is 20. So there's no more fractions right now, right? So it's a little bit easier. 20 plus 9 is 29. Now we're technically not allowed to just multiply everything by 12. So to undo that, well, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we would divide by 12 or put our answer over 12. It means the same thing. That's our answer. All right, we'll try it again with number 2. So we said that 15 was our common denominator. And I'll tell you what, for the other ones, let's go ahead and write our common denominator. So number 3 is 10. Number 4, I don't have it here, but you might want to write 6. Between 7 and 3, your common denominator is 21. For 8 and 4, your common denominator would be 8. But I want to show you what happens if you pick something that's bigger. 16 is a common denominator, so that's okay. But I want to show you what happens when you do that. 6 is the least common denominator, and for 8, 18 is. All right, so let's go back here to number 2. We got our 15. We're going to put that on the top, and it helps if you say it out loud to yourself. 15 divided by 3 is 5, times 2 is 10. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Times 4 is 12. So now I'm doing 10 minus 12 to get negative 2. And we're going to put that over 15. All right, let's do it again. We're going to write times 10 on the tops here. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Times 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Times 1 is 5. And 4 minus 5 is negative 1. Now to undo it, so it's like we never cheated, we put that over 10. So I want you to take that approach and try it with the next few problems. Pause the video, give it a shot, just like we did in 1 through 3, and then we'll see how our answers compare. All right, let's look how it went out for you. Number 4, we should have got 18 over 6 like we did originally, and that becomes 3, of course. 5, your numbers would become 9 and 14 to make 23. 6, your numbers would become 14 and 12 to make 26. But 26 and 16 are both even numbers, so we can divide them both by 2, and that's how we get 13 over 8. So if you would have used 8 instead of 16 for number 6, you would have gotten 13 over 8 right away, as opposed to having to reduce your fraction. That's the only difference. And then 7, your numbers should have been 20 and 5 to make 15, but 15 and 6 are both divisible by 3, so we should have 5 halves. And then number 8, your new numbers are 10 and 12. You get negative 2. Negative 2 over 18 is the same thing as negative 1/9.